All right, you guys, today we're talking about a big one, your budget. This can be such a big pain point for people, and I totally understand why. It is a lot of money that goes into your wedding day, and it affects all of your decisions, all of your vendor choices. So it's an important thing to look at and to take seriously. As I was researching some of the national averages for weddings, I found a quote that 1/3 of couples going into their wedding planet severely underestimate their wedding budget. So I want us to get over kind of that sticker shock and to really be realistic about what it costs to have the wedding of your dreams. Um, so according to bride.com, the national average for a wedding in 2018 was around $44,000. However, in North Carolina, it's a little bit lower than that. They're generally around the $30,000 range. And this is for a wedding with 100 to 150 guests. It does not include wedding rings or your honeymoon. So yes, it does cost a lot to have good food, good music, good location, with all of those people in attendance that you want to have there. But you only get the chance once, right? So let's plan accordingly and make sure that we're ready for some of these financial costs. So I'm going to go over some of the biggest ticket items when it comes to planning your budget, okay? This is kind of a cost breakdown for you to start thinking about it. And it's a lot, so just bear with me as I go through this. So obviously the number of guests is going to affect your wedding in a huge way. It's cost per plate, right? So as you have your wedding guest count, you'll want to plan for about 80% of that, of the guests that you invite actually attending. So in addition to that, we have your wedding dress, accessories, and any alterations. The tux and accessories and any alterations. And then we think about the beauty. So we have hair and makeup for the bride and bridesmaids. And if your groom wants a hairstylist in there, adding that into there as well. Then, of course, we have entertainment. So a DJ, live musician, band, if you want a musician playing during your ceremony. So the music or entertainment side of things. Flowers and decorations, so we have obviously your bouquet, bridesmaids bouquet, centerpieces, corsages, boutonnieres, any arrangements around the venue, as well as if you want a floral installation on your ceremony arch or from the ceiling. I've seen lots of gorgeous things, and flowers are probably my favorite part of weddings. So you can plan on what flowers to be a big part of your budget. Then we have gifts and favors. So gifts for your bridal party, gifts for your parents, gift for your spouse, tips for your vendor, as well as any favors that you want for your guests. Then we have paper goods. So we have invitations, we have the cost of postage to mail them out. We have ceremony programs, guest book, the reception menus, setting cards, and then thank you cards that are going out after the wedding day. Then, of course, we have photography and videography, somebody to capture the day, and that includes a wedding album with the photos after the wedding, engagement session, if you want digital images, or if you want a photo booth on site for your guests to enjoy. And then, as we talked about in a previous video, having a wedding planner there are lots of different options for that. You can have a full service wedding planner, month of coordinator, or just a day of coordinator. Then, of course, we have your ceremony officiant. Within your venue, we have rentals for tables, chairs, linens. We have transportation, especially if you're serving alcohol, transportation for your guests, lighting, a tent if they don't have an indoor option, a dance floor. Then, of course, moving on, we have food for the rehearsal dinner, catering, beverage or bar service, cakes, desserts. And then lastly, any extras, cake topper, aisle runner, ring box, marriage license, and meals for your wedding vendor. So that's just kind of like a general outline of things to start thinking about that go into your wedding budget. So I have a few tips on cutting down on some of those costs so that you can still keep your budget trimmed down. Another thing to think about before we go into that is some of the upfront costs, right? So as you're booking your vendors, most of, if not all of them, are going to be asking for a payment to hold your date, so a deposit fee. So you're going to have a large chunk of money that's due right up front. And then for me, for example, I ask for a deposit and then the remaining balance is due 1 month before the wedding date. So if that's the case with the other vendors, then you're going to have a huge upfront cost and then a huge cost right before the wedding too. So if you want to break those costs up, you can ask your wedding vendors if they offer payment plans. A lot of them do, and then that helps you to be able to spread out some of those payments throughout the course of the 12 to 18 months while you're planning your wedding, rather than having big chunks all at once. Whatever works out with your budget. So now moving on to some ideas on ways to cut out some of those costs. When you're thinking about your venue, some venues offer a lot of things all in one package. Some of them offer a coordinator, catering, rentals, obviously the venue itself, the location, and some of them have lodging all in one area. And so sometimes it can be cost effective to book a venue that has all of that in a package deal rather than separately booking out those things. You could consider using a backyard if you can imagine yourself in a backyard type setting and cutting down on some of the costs of renting out a venue in that way. However, you'll still want to make sure that you pay for a tent in case of bad weather, and you also need to pay for rentals and a setup crew as well. Ways to cut down costs when we think about catering and bar service. Obviously, your guest list is going to be the biggest factor in that. So considering trimming down your guest list a little bit. And you can also see if serving your food in a buffet style rather than a plated meal would cut down on costs. When you're thinking about your wedding dress, try looking at secondhand stores or even just renting your dress if you're not completely attached to the idea of having it after your wedding day. That could be a much cheaper option rather than purchasing your wedding dress. And especially if you know that you're going to want to go to epic locations for your portraits, or you know that your dress has a good chance of getting dirty, then perhaps you'll be okay choosing a less expensive dress if you know that it's going to end up getting perhaps dirty anyway. When we think about your florals and your budget for your florals, there's a couple different things that you can think about. One way is to use a company such as Flower Moxie. Flower Moxie will mail you the florals along with setup instructions so that you have the florals, but you are the ones arranging it. And so you're not paying for their time to be there to arrange it. If you go with this option, I would highly recommend still making sure you have one person that's in charge of that's not you, so that in the days before your wedding, you are not the one worrying about flower arrangements. So pick somebody that has a good eye for design and is willing to make the sacrifice of time, because here that's what we're doing. We're exchanging time for money, right? So find somebody that has the time to do those arrangements for you if you decide to go that route. You could consider your bridesmaids carrying something other than a bouquet, if that's one way you could cut down on the floral costs. And another idea is, or my number one suggestion is to get the bouquet of your dreams. Go all out with your bouquet, and then we can use that bouquet in other areas of your photos to make the rest of your wedding day look just as elegant as that bouquet. I can use it within your invitation suite and your layouts. We can use it on your sweetheart table as a big centerpiece. We can use it throughout the day, obviously with your portraits. And so making sure that your one floral piece is exactly how you want it to be adds a lot of elegance in all other areas of your wedding day. And then one other thing that I talked about in a previous video was choosing a weekday for your wedding. Sometimes vendors offer discounts for weekday weddings because it's a date that they wouldn't otherwise fill up. So if you're open to choosing a weekday instead of a weekend, that can be another way that you cut down costs. Now, bringing this back to a photographer's perspective, right? So what should you as a wedding couple, be prepared to spend on your wedding photographer? At the end of the day, when the florals all dried out and the tables are taken down, your dress is unzipped, the makeup is washed off, when all is said and done, your photographs are really the only lasting, tangible thing that you are going to have from your wedding day. And when you look at it from that perspective, I hope that you are more willing to invest in a photographer that you love and trust to capture it in the way that you know it deserves to be captured. If you're going to be putting that much money and time and energy and heart and passion into making it what you want it to be, then make sure it's captured in just a passionate way, in just a realistic way, so that you have the photos to show for it and to remember all of this with. So for me, I recommend being prepared to spend 15 to 20% of your wedding budget on your wedding photographer. So if your wedding ends up being about the average for North Carolina, $30,000, then spending $4,500 on your wedding photographer is not a radical idea. It's what I hope that you see is investing in a photographer that's worth it is going to give you those lasting memories, and it's going to make it all worth it in the end. So this is my big budget breakdown, some things to think about in terms of what to expect your expenses to be on your wedding day, and some of those averages that we see in there. So I hope this was helpful. I hope some of those ideas to cut down on your costs was helpful. And thanks for tuning in. I can't wait to chat with you again next week.